Join me today as we make some fluffy, soft biscuits made with freshly milled flour. So I don't even know how many biscuit recipes were failures in this house the last year, almost year and a half, since we've switched to freshly milled flour. Far too many to count. My husband was at the point where he was asking me, just please go back to the old biscuit recipe. I don't care if it's not as healthy. But with what I know now about freshly milled flour and feeding that to our family and how much more beneficial that is than just all-purpose flour, self-rising flour, this typical flours that biscuits are made with, I couldn't just go back because we have biscuits at least one night a week, sometimes two. We always have a breakfast night and biscuits are the star of that night. So I just couldn't with a good conscience go back to making the biscuits I used to make. I had a recipe, it was a sourdough recipe, but it was made with all-purpose flour, and when I tried to convert that recipe with freshly milled, it just didn't convert. I had hard biscuits, I had rock biscuits, I had flat biscuits. So I'm sharing with y'all today the recipe I finally found that works wonderfully with freshly milled flour. So if you've been around my channel, you know I like to use fermented with sourdough, soaked or sprouted grains in my kitchen. So I have some soaked and dehydrated soft white wheat here. I keep this in stock all the time in my house, in my kitchen, because I use this for biscuits at least once a week. I use it for quick breads, muffins, anything that I'm using freshly milled flour with that is not fermented. So I keep that well stocked. So that's my soft white wheat for the biscuits, the pies, the pastries. But that's an easy process if you don't know how to soak and or sprout and then dehydrate your grains. My previous video showed how I do that. It's very simple. It's just something you have to stay on top of to keep stocked in your kitchen. So let's get into the biscuit recipe. We're going to mix it up and let it chill for 15 minutes, and then we will shape them, bake them, and they are going to be delicious. It is our typical biscuit night, so I'm making these for my family for tonight. So join me today as we make freshly milled flour biscuit. The recipe for these biscuits will be down below in the description box for you to easily reference, but the ingredients are very simple. 300 grams of soft white wheat, a little bit of salt, a couple of teaspoons of baking powder, a stick of butter that's frozen, kefir, and honey. If you don't have kefir, you can easily substitute buttermilk or clabber. We just have lots of kefir in our kitchen. We keep it rolling all the time. My children love it. So we use kefir. That was kind of the missing step with a lot of those past biscuits. I was trying to just substitute milk instead of buttermilk or kefir or clabber, and you need that thicker milk texture. I've seen people make beautiful biscuits with just milk, but it did not work in our kitchen. So I don't know what that was about. I'm telling you, I've been through so many biscuit recipes the last year and a half-ish when I've been trying to find the perfect recipe for making biscuits with freshly milled flour. So we're gonna start out by weighing our grains. You don't have to weigh this in cups for you in case you don't have a kitchen scale or you prefer not to weigh it, but honestly, it keeps me from getting as many measuring spoons dirty. 300 grams of my soaked and dehydrated soft white wheat berries. I get these in bulk from Azure Standard. Now I'll take these to my grain mill, which is in my pantry, and grind them into flour. Have our flour. Ideally, I would chill this, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to wait for that. Because right now my children are being quiet while I'm working on this video, and you never know how long they're going to stay quiet. So we're going to keep rolling with it. But ideally, if you have time to mill your flour maybe an hour or so ahead of time and then chill it in the fridge, that would be optimal, because when you're making biscuits or pastries, you want to keep everything as cold as possible because we're about to add that cold frozen butter. All that in there, since we did weigh it at 300 grams. Go ahead and add the rest of my dry ingredients. So that's just going to be baking powder and salt. 24 grams of baking powder, or about 2 tablespoons. I'm just going to weigh it because I already have my kitchen scale out. And about I have a teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt. 5 grams. And we'll give that just a gentle mix. There's biscuit recipes where you can just chop your butter in with like a pastry cutter. You could chop it very fine beforehand. I've chopped it in with scissors, but I found the best way to incorporate butter into biscuits is with a cheese grater. Y'all, even tried a recipe once where because you'll know the whole dilemma was that with this was having the freshly milled flour, but also having it soaked and sprouted. So I tried the whole method where you soak your freshly milled flour the night before, and you have like a really wet dough. But if you've ever made biscuits, I was trying that recipe and I was like, this is not how you make biscuits, because usually you want like the flaky butter. And that recipe even melted the butter, and the lady had the most beautiful biscuit pictures, but our biscuits did not look beautiful. So I have tried it all. So yes, when I melted the butter for that recipe, trying it out, I was like, this is not gonna work. You had to mix it in a food processor and like reconstitute everything after your overnight soak, and then try to get like this fluffy dough. Not fluffy at all. This dough will chill for about 15 minutes. I've left it up to like 30 or 40, but I wouldn't leave it too long because you don't want your dough like so stiff and hard that it's hard to work with to roll out and fold and cut your biscuits. All that butter in there. And you just kind of want little balls of butter in there. Okay. Now we're gonna add our milk kefir. If you've never made milk kefir, it's so simple and it's such a wonderful kitchen staple to have in your kitchen. So all you do is get some kefir grains, get some kefir grain starters. I have bought mine online, I have gotten it from friends, and you just add it to milk. It's the easiest ferment ever. You can literally just add some grains to the milk and that's it. And it's so beneficial for the gut health. Now we're actually cooking this kefir, so it's not gonna have the beneficial bacteria because it's gonna be cooked. Obviously we're gonna be cooking it over the temperature of live food. But we're using kefir because we need that thick milk texture than just regular milk. 16 grams of honey. That comes out fast. Now with our scale. It'll come together pretty easily into a soft, wet dough. I try not to use my hands too much with making biscuits because of the heating up of the butter. You want to keep that butter as cold as possible. Just like a wet, mushy dough. It's going to harden up a little bit in the fridge for about 15 minutes. And then we will roll it out, do our layers, and cut our biscuits. So I'm gonna put it straight into the fridge. I also love that these are sweetened with honey instead of any other sugars. While this is chilling, I'm gonna grab a cast iron skillet and get it preheating in our oven because we want a really, really hot cast iron skillet. You do not have to use cast iron. You can use a baking dish. I just love using my cast irons. I usually do too because I don't want to overcrowd the biscuits. My oven is so loud preheating. I hope you can hear me over it. It is not my favorite oven, but it serves our family well. While our oven is preheating, I got my cutting board ready, my biscuit cutter. This was my great-grandmother's biscuit cutter. I wish it was a little sharper. You're going to want a very sharp tool to cut your biscuits. I have tried to get away with using a mason jar ring, a mason jar, but with those options, you typically have to twist your biscuits, and this is where I think most of my biscuits failed. When you twist your biscuits, when you're pulling them out of the dough up, you are creating a seal around that biscuit, and that is trapping in all of the air pockets, and it can't rise and let that biscuit make that fluffy biscuit that we all love, especially here in the South. That's the kind of biscuits we think of here in the South. That's what my husband was expecting when I was cooking biscuits all those times, those failures. So this one works great. I would actually like to get a little sharper one, but actually I'm gonna try to sharpen this one before we get started. And I always keep a jar in my freezer of extra flour. When I mill flour, if I have extra, I always just add it to a jar or a bag and keep it in my freezer. It doesn't matter if it's hard or soft. This is actually hard wheat that I used from bread making yesterday. It does not matter when you're just using it for dusting. Okay, our dough, I'm gonna leave the camera like this so you can see what I'm doing. I know I said that we don't want to use our hands too much, but I always use my hands initially. I know my grandmother used her hands every day when she made biscuits. She made biscuits every morning. My mom told me that when my grandfather, he loved biscuits, obviously, but when my grandmother taught my mom to make the biscuits, he could tell the difference in his daughter's biscuits and my grandmother's biscuits. So I know she used her hands. I'm going to use my hands a little bit, but I'm going to use the rolling pin as well. All right, so we get it floured up. I usually like to do like an initial push down. A little flour goes a long way. And we're just going to do a roll. A bench scraper works great for folding so that you're not touching the dough too much and getting it too warm. But I always like turn the dough with my hands. So we're going to do a total of at least 3 of those rolls and then do that tri-fold with the bench scraper. Folding it in thirds. Start cutting out your biscuits if they are sticky on your biscuit cutter. That is when you're gonna have that. You're gonna have to wiggle the cutter and you can seal the biscuit, which you do not want to do. Like, that is the biggest key I think I never understood on making biscuits, is not sealing your biscuit up. You want it to be open and airy where air can get in and help the biscuit rise. This rectangle, I'm gonna go ahead and roll this out about 1 inch thick. Straight down, straight up. It's also really delicious if you want brown butter biscuits. Put some butter in the bottom of your skillets, your pan, whatever you're using. You'll have like a really brown butter bottom to your biscuit. I didn't do that today. I just preheated the pans. And we're gonna cook the biscuits. I think I forgot to mention we are cooking them at 450 for about 18 to 20 minutes. I usually just watch them until they get browned on top and are nice and fluffy. Also, for some reason unknown to me, biscuits rise better when they touch each other. So I always have my biscuits touch. My grandmother had her biscuits touch when she cooked them, so I'm gonna do that as well. These are light, fluffy, soft, pillowy, just delicious. Melt in your mouth. We like to eat them with butter and honey. Finally, a freshly milled biscuit where I did not have to sift out the bran and the germ. I forgot to mention that I did try biscuit making with sifting my flour, my freshly milled flour, still with subpar results. These are by far the best ones we've tried ever. I will have the recipe down below for y'all if you want to try them out as well. They are just a favorite in our family, and I hope you love them just as much as we do.